Coming up today on the Quarter Hour podcast, we chat to a former Nova rising star who made it to the big dance but chose to leave the Nova family just as he was being described as the next big thing on Australian radio, and chose to use his huge talent for life at the ABC at a very young age. Let's find out why.
I've got some Bruno Mars, some Sia to play you after the break at Nova 106.9. Oh, you got a quick question for me, Beck?
You're not Asian, are you?
You're asking if I'm Asian with a name like Tim Wong-See.
Were you born here?
Yes, mate. I was born in Sydney.
Well, then you're not Asian.
Oh.
Listen to your voice, mate.
I know, mate. I hear my voice in my headphones every day. I sound really Aussie, but I'm Chinese.
Still not believing that.
Well, thanks for telling me what I am, Beck. You ring back tomorrow and tell me what I am tomorrow. How did that sound?
All right.
Hi and welcome to the Quarter Hour podcast. I'm your host Liam Renton along with Wade Kingsley, and today we've tracked down former Nova talent Tim Wong-See. Now, Nova had been very proud over the years of some of their rising stars. They were very keen to let us know about a young Tim Blackwell when he first started and how good he was. They were right. They told us that Kent Small was going to change nighttime radio. Tick, tick, they were right again. And they made us aware of a young guy from Sydney called Tim Wong-See, who back in 2013 was named on Australia's top radio talent list. He lasted a couple of years at Nova and then left. We're going to find out today why. And we'll ask the question about life at the ABC for our guest today, Tim Wong-See.
The ABC Sunshine Coast. This is Tim Wong-See.
On snakes, Hayley's in Maroochydore. Morning, Hayley.
Hi, how you going?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. What happened to you?
Well, I've actually had 3 snakes on my head.
You had 3 snakes fall on your head.
I know, it sounds crazy, right?
That is kind of crazy. Did you then go to some weekend market and go into one of those tents where someone tells you future and said, look, I've just had 3 snakes fall on my head. What's the symbol? What am I being told here?
Apparently it's good luck.
Good to hear from you, Hayley. Thanks for the call.
Tim Wong-See, welcome to the Quarter Hour podcast.
Liam, good to talk to you.
Where'd your love of radio come from? Where'd it start?
That's a good question. I think it was when I was 10. I was living in the northwest parts of Sydney and West Pennant Hills, and I had a deep, nerdy love for electronics, which blossomed and manifested into pirate radio. Because I built my own FM transmitter. It was about a 30-watt transmitter aerial on the side of the house, made of old curtain rod CD changer for 24/7 music. So that was going great guns for about 2 years. You could hear it around the surrounding suburbs until someone complained to ACMA and knocked on my door of my parents' home and shut me down. So that's where it started.
Yeah, you famously got caught by the government. Who knocks on the door? Like, is it someone in a suit? Are they wearing glasses? And what do they say to you?
They had tear gas, which I think was over the top, and guns drawn. And when I showed my hands as a 12-year-old, I think they then they put their weapons down at that point, which was nice of them. They were very understanding, all jokes aside. They could, I think they were quite tickled by the setup. Actually, Liam, they hadn't really been to a 12-year-old's house before to shut down a pirate radio station to rival Radio Caroline. So they were understanding, and they showed me community radio stations I could go to instead, and that's where I went to the next day.
I also set up a pirate radio station in my room when I was 18, but I got my dad to put the aerial on the roof, and he was the superintendent of police, and he said to me, "Am I going to get in trouble for this?" And I said, "No, you won't. I might, but you'll be fine."
That's great. That your dad was in on it.
How did you get into radio then? You famously went to Nova, which we'll get to, but what was the steps before that?
Well, I think it was the love of how things work, as I say. Like, I think I was pulling the backs off TV remotes, which kind of sparked my love for electronics to start with. And I was at Dick Smith Electronics Store when that existed years ago, every second weekend getting stuff. And that was the kind of the technology side of things. But I think it was the craft and skill required to talk to someone so intimately one-on-one, but also talk to thousands of people that got me hooked. I thought, how can you do that? That seems like such a great skill to be able to find out more about it and try to master. And when I heard other people, professionals, doing it on the radio, I think that just deepened my love for the medium.
You would have been a tech's dream. Did you ever find yourself fixing stuff off your own back, or maybe tweaking some headphones or fixing a wire somewhere because you knew how to do stuff?
Yeah, I did actually. I had a soldering iron in my garage. This is at my parents' house, mind you. And yeah, I did have a love for it. I was quite fascinated by the whole thing.
So give us a quick lap of the map. What radio stations have you worked at? Where do you go around Australia?
So Nova Sydney was the first stop for mid-dawns and late nights, then Nova Brisbane for afternoons, a short period of time at SBS, and then it was ABC Gold Coast 2018 was my first ABC gig, and then ABC Sunshine Coast, then ABC Albany, Western Australia for breakfast, and now back here on the sunny coast doing breakfast.
I could name you probably two other announcers in history that had their first gig at Nova. It's very rare for someone to have their first on-air gig in such a major market. Were you aware of how big it was at the time?
Look, I think I was, and I realised that it was rare. I think we were told in the AFTRS class that, you might go to a small regional market, and a lot of my peers were. I was really gunning for Triple J at the time. I was emailing Ollie Ward, the then PD, countless air checks. And I think, how did Nova come around? I think maybe some of my lecturers were talking to them. Brendan Taylor was the PD there at the time. And he, I think, got wind of my tape. And when I got through the doors, I mean, just going into that Piedmont building, you can imagine, fresh as an AFTRS graduate, going to a capital city station in Sydney at Nova 969. I felt that power and that kind of that vibe, every time I was there, even though it was 1 o'clock in the morning, it was me and the cleaner and newsreader. But I did realise it, and I was nervous, appropriately nervous, but I was excited and tried to back myself in, I guess, at the start to try and fake it till I make it or something like that.
They could clearly see your talent because they obviously had you pegged for big things. They moved you to Brisbane. What was your experience at Nova like?
It was exciting. It was exciting. I mean, CHR radio, it's upbeat, it's fast, it's cool, it's hip, and, you're selling fresh hits and giving contests away. And particularly when I got to Nova Brisbane, I was doing afternoons there. I mean, still rates very well. It was a fantastic station. It really was, there was a lot of focus on culture as well and making the place fun, and I think Jay Walkerton, who was the PD and GM at the time, really understood fun in the corridors means fun at the speakers, and I think that is so true. And it was going to the events with the listener parties with Ash Kip and Lutzi and Brecky, and sometimes getting recognised and stuff when I was starting out was quite exciting, and it was a great city to be on air in, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great way to scratch the initial itch, I guess, of radio, which what got me into it, which was only the beginning. I guess it's still going, but it was a fantastic, fun place to be. It was great.
My memories of you on air were that you leant very heavily on your Chinese heritage. Was that your idea, Nova's idea?
That was half, I'd say, or maybe because I obviously in commercial radio, like I remember when I was at Nova Sydney, someone said, "Why don't you call yourself Tim C, as in the letter C, not SEE?" Which I said no to, I think, which didn't end up happening. But I think when I was at Nova Brisbane, I do remember having conversations with people like Jay about, how are you going to stand out? You need to pop out of the speakers to not sound too much like a PD, but what's your point of difference? And I think it naturally gravitated towards that because of maybe Brisbane as a city, not as multicultural as a place like Sydney or Melbourne, for example. And so I was happily, I wasn't forced or anything like that into it. I think I naturally lent into it and put a bit of showbiz on to produce some of the works that I did. I didn't mind it at the time. On hindsight, would I do it again? Probably not. But I think I was kind of just starting out at the time. The danger is you become pigeonholed, isn't it? If you lean in that for too long and do it too hard, you end up getting becoming a one-trick pony, which you don't want.
Was it a bit of like casual racism? Like the lady saying, "You don't sound Chinese." Like that doesn't really fly. It's
funny, like I get that on and off the air, and I don't know if I'm used to it, but everyone's different, I guess. But I have a pretty thick skin about it. It doesn't bother me. I mean, yeah, it would be nice if when I met people in real life, for example. I think my principle is when you first meet someone and they're kind of looking you up and down and asking where you're from and that kind of thing, that puts me off a bit. But I think that it probably was casual racism. But again, it's the context, isn't it? It's like, where are you broadcasting to? What are the people's... I guess that people might be genuinely interested, but it might come across as casual racism and you might label it as such, but it can be sometimes genuine curiosity. So I don't really know how to put it, but sometimes it probably was a bit of casual racism. People maybe a bit ignorant or naive to it and don't know it themselves. Maybe that's how it comes across. But it very much depends who it's being done to. And for me, I've always had a pretty thick skin about it, I guess. Yeah, and you have to in this business, don't you?
So you were Nova's next big thing, and you left. How come you left?
I was made redundant, basically. Zeta came in. The automation system, which Nova still uses, and Nova wanted to experiment with networking workdays at the time. I remember the powers that be made a decision to trial that, more networking, which I don't think worked in the end, but that was my exit. After 2 years, I did afternoons there in Brisbane. And
you found yourself on the ABC, which some might say is like the opposite end of the dial, because you could have gone to KISS or SCA. What was it about the ABC that drew you in?
I think it's the kind of art of conversation and how to make it so intimate. I think, and I still think, there's just nothing that exists that can have that power. And I wanted to do it myself, and I couldn't do it over the top of 10-second speed breaks, selling the breakfast show and giving away ice cold cans of Coke. I needed to speak for longer. I needed to tackle bigger topics. I needed to, have smarter conversations. And I heard, 612 ABC Brisbane. I heard lots of it happening there, and I thought, how do I get into that? Realize how difficult that path is and what it can take to get there. But and I've always loved radio. So once I knew I wanted to go there, I stopped at nothing to get a foot in the door, and so that's what fascinated me about it.
So was ABC always the dream, and maybe Nova letting you go was a blessing in disguise?
Yeah, I would say so in hindsight. I didn't know it at the time, but I think it's been absolutely a great and the right move for me, given where my passions lie and what I like doing on the air. I was probably ready at the end of 2 years to move on from Arvos, and I'm really grateful that I've landed at the ABC and being able to do it now. But yeah, I think so.
Do you ever think about where you may have ended up? I mean, if they hadn't pushed your hand or forced you out the door, do you ever think, I could have been National Drive or Brisbane Breakfast by now?
A little bit. I remember at some stage along the way, I did a demo with Mick Malloy and Jane Kennedy to be the anchor for their National Drive show. I got the call up to come down to Melbourne to do a demo with them, and I think that was, again, one of those moments where I didn't quite realise who I was sharing the studio with, being so young. But that obviously didn't work out. So, yeah, my mind, not so much now, but in the early days when I started the ABC, I listened to commercial and think I could have been doing the top and tail there. I could have been the anchor here. But, again, happy and grateful with the choices that I made. Not disparaging at all to commercial. It's got its place, absolutely. But for what I want, what I'm doing now is the right fit.
Any mates still in commercial radio? Do you follow their careers and what they're doing?
Oh, absolutely. Nick Allen Duckett, for example, who does just doing Nova Brisbane, Brecky. He was a street teamer when I was there. Nathan is on 2-day Brecky. We were at Nova Sydney together, and yeah, there's people dotted everywhere that I've done some time with somewhere along the line, and sometimes they're in or out of it. Also, my AFTRS colleagues, some are in talk radio, some are at the ABC. So, yeah, the network. Well, the industry is smaller than you think. I'm sure you know that too, Liam. People aren't never too far away.
So tell us what you're loving about the ABC. You're doing breakfast at the moment. What do you genuinely love about working there?
I think that, obviously local is the bread and butter of ABC local radio, and in a local media is shrinking, and some of these kinds of local outlets are becoming fewer and fewer. So to have presenters who are on the air, who know the area intimately, right? They don't just pass through there. They don't just have looked it up on Wikipedia. They actually live with the listeners, shop with the listeners, go to events with the listeners, drive the same roads as the listeners, and you can talk about it on the air. And when we talk about, radio imitating real life, that's the best way to do it, isn't it? Because you're actually there in the thick of it. And I know that obviously we've got a few commercials up here who are great and some fantastic presenters who are also local. But again, I think it's going back to that role of the ABC, is that we don't only cover the issues, it's our job to find out why and go to the next level and track down that person who made that decision maybe years ago to give context. And then you get talk back, and then it's just this whole extra level of local reflection and local knowledge that I think is becoming less common these days with networking in the commercial side of things, that with bottom lines with ad revenue. But the ABC still continues to do that. And then, of course, you've got emergency broadcasting, which is a whole other beast of itself, which has earned itself a formidable reputation, really, when it comes to the national broadcaster's place with that kind of emergency broadcasting. So I think it's value to the community, and to be able to be a part of that, to be able to be one of the voices in that, I think is such a privilege.
What's your advice for aspiring announcers who want to work at a particular station, or they're at a job and they want to work somewhere else? You know, you followed a dream there. What's your advice for people who have other dreams in radio?
I think you've got to be true to yourself and be authentic. You know, if you do genuinely love, or if you wanted to work at a music station because you think it's a cool place to be, but you're not fully invested in loving music, maybe think about something else. Or if you're like me and you like, the talk side of things, pursue that. But I think you also got to be authentic on the air, really, don't you? I mean, that's easier said than done. But radio is the ultimate BS detector, as they say. And if you truly find your voice and find your authentic self on the air, and you listen back to your air checks, listen back to your tapes, what does your voice sound like? Is it a CHR? Is it an easy listening? Is it a talk? And try and play to your strengths. I think someone told me, find out what you're good at and be the best at it. And I think that was good advice.
What's your best memory, mate? Like, what's brought you the most happiness in your radio journey so far?
There's many, but I think a recent one is when I was doing Brekkie here, and we had a listener text in one morning saying they had received a letter for someone who wasn't her, and could the ABC help track down that rightful person? And I remember getting that text in the text line, and I almost wasn't going to read it out on air, because who's possibly going to know who the rightful recipient is? How can they be listening? So I did it in passing anyway, and we got a call from someone who knew that person, and we put that person who got the letter in touch with the right person. And the rightful recipient turned out to be a 100-year-old woman from our community. And it was a letter from the King congratulating her on her 100th birthday. And I went over to her place where she lived, at this retirement village. We did a story with the two of them and reunited them. And she is 100, but she looks like she's 60. She's going so well. But to me, that was just, it even blew me away about how powerful radio can be. You never know who's listening, and the fact that that person turned to the ABC to help find that rightful recipient, I think speaks volumes about our reputation in the community and how many years we've built that up, and the kind of privilege it is to be in this seat. I'm in this breakfast seat for now. People have come before me, people will come after me, but I hold it right now, and I love that.
Oh, that's a great story. Hey, well done. A decade at the ABC. Really good to hear your story. You're doing amazing work. And Tim Wong-See, thanks for joining us on the Quarter Hour podcast.
Thanks, Liam. Good to talk to you.